The night was quiet at Bianchi's Fine Dining, one of the most expensive restaurants in New York. Inside, the air smelled of money, wine, and danger. Behind one of the corner tables sat Lorenzo Moretti, a man everyone feared, the Mafia Boss who controlled half of the city's underground. He had dark eyes that watched everything, and no one dared speak loudly when he was in the room. His men sat at nearby tables, pretending to eat, but they were watching too. That evening, a new waitress was on duty. Her name was Elena Rossi. She had only been working there for a month. She was quiet, polite, and always wore her hair tied neatly. No one knew much about her, and that was how she liked it. When she walked up to Lorenzo's table, her hands didn't shake. She spoke clearly. "Good evening, sir. Would you like your usual?" He looked up at her. For the first time that day, his expression softened. "You remember?" She smiled a little. "Of course, sir. Double espresso after dinner." Something about her calm voice caught his attention. Most people trembled when they spoke to him, but she didn't. He noticed her accent too. Soft, Italian, but not from the streets of New York. It reminded him of home. Later that evening, while Elena was clearing the plates, her phone rang. She forgot to silence it. "Pronto, Mama," she answered quickly, her tone switching to fluent Italian. "Sì, sto bene. No, non posso parlare adesso. Ti chiamo più tardi." Everyone turned toward her voice, including Lorenzo. The restaurant went silent for a moment. His men exchanged quick looks. When she ended the call, she noticed the room was quiet. She apologized softly. "Sorry, sir. My mother." But Lorenzo wasn't angry. He just stared at her like he was trying to remember something from far away. "You speak Italian?" he asked. "Yes, sir," she said. "I was born in Florence." He leaned back, studying her. "Florence," his tone dropped low. "Beautiful city." She nodded politely and walked away, not knowing that her life had just changed. After the restaurant closed, Lorenzo stayed behind with two of his trusted men, Marco and Vincent. He poured himself another glass of wine and asked quietly, "Who is that waitress?" Marco checked his notes. "Elena Rossi, 24. Moved to New York 3 months ago. No record, no trouble, no family listed here." Lorenzo's eyes narrowed. No family listed, but she just spoke to her mother in Italian? "Yes, boss." He tapped the table slowly. Elena's shift ended at midnight. She took off her apron, said goodnight to the chef, and stepped into the cool New York night. The streets were almost empty, except for the yellow lights from passing cabs and the sound of someone playing saxophone near the corner. She pulled her coat tighter and walked quickly. It wasn't fear, it was habit. She had lived in enough places to know that walking home alone after dark wasn't smart, but she couldn't afford a taxi every night. What she didn't know was that a black SUV rolled slowly behind her, headlights dimmed. Inside were two of Lorenzo's men, Marco and Vincent. Marco watched her through the glass. "Boss said to keep a distance," he reminded Vincent. Vincent shrugged. "I just want to see where she goes. She looks too quiet to be trouble." They followed her for several blocks until she entered an old apartment building. She checked her mailbox, climbed the stairs, and disappeared inside her small room on the second floor. Marco made a note on his phone. "Apartment 2B. Queens. No security." "Got it," Vincent said. "So what's the deal? Why's the boss suddenly interested in a waitress?" Marco didn't answer. He'd worked for Lorenzo long enough to know when not to ask questions. Meanwhile, upstairs, Elena boiled water for tea. She sat by her window, looking at the skyline. She missed home, the smell of bread from her mother's kitchen, the sound of church bells in Florence. She had left Italy in a hurry, hoping no one would ever find her. She didn't know that one of the most powerful men in New York was already looking for her. The next morning, Lorenzo sat in his private office above the restaurant. Files and photos were spread across his desk. Marco and Vincent stood nearby. "Her papers are clean," Marco said. "Visa is valid. She used to study art in Florence. She worked at a museum for a year before coming here." Lorenzo's brow furrowed. Why did she come here? According to the papers, she wanted a fresh start. But there's something strange. The museum she worked for was owned by Carlo DeSantis. Lorenzo's jaw tightened. DeSantis. Yes, boss. That name wasn't ordinary. Carlo DeSantis was one of the most dangerous mafia figures in Italy. A man Lorenzo once did business with before things went bad, before blood was spilled. Maybe she's connected, Vincent said quietly. Lorenzo stared at Elena's photo. Or maybe she's just unlucky. He didn't like coincidences, especially when they spoke Italian in his restaurant that evening. Elena came to work again. She smiled like nothing was wrong, even though she'd been feeling watched since morning. Maybe it was her imagination, she thought. Maybe New York was just noisy and crowded. When she walked past Lorenzo's table, he looked at her longer than usual. "Elena, right?" he said. She nodded politely. "Yes, sir. Sit for a minute." Her heart skipped. Waitresses weren't supposed to sit with customers, especially not him. But something in his voice wasn't a command, it was curiosity. She hesitated. "Then Saturday, you're from Florence," he said. "Yes." "Why come here?" She looked down at her hands. Sometimes people leave not because they want to, but because they have to. He watched her face carefully. "And what made you have to?" She forced a small smile. "Maybe someday I'll tell you." Lorenzo said nothing. He only nodded, as if he understood more than she said that night. He told Marco quietly, "No one bothers her. No one touches her. Not until I say otherwise." Marco frowned. "Boss, you think she's dangerous?" Lorenzo looked out the window. "I think she's hiding from something, and I want to know what." 2 days later, something happened that made everything worse. That a man walked into the restaurant wearing a long coat and a hat pulled low. He had a scar on his cheek and an Italian accent. He sat near the bar and kept watching Elena. Lorenzo noticed. He didn't like it. When the man paid his bill and left, Lorenzo whispered to Vincent, "Follow him." Vincent followed him 3 blocks before losing him near the subway. But not before catching his name from a receipt he dropped, Luigi DeSantis, the same last name as Carlo. That night, Lorenzo gathered his men. "She's connected to them," he said coldly. "They're looking for her." He leaned back, thinking hard. Don't let her leave this place after work tonight. When the restaurant closed, Elena grabbed her bag, ready to head home. But at the door, Marco blocked her way gently. "Sorry, Miss Rossi," he said. "Boss wants to see you." She frowned. "At this hour?" "Yeah. Won't take long." She followed him upstairs to Lorenzo's private office. The room was dim, the city lights glowing behind him. He didn't look angry. He looked worried. "Who is Luigi DeSantis?" he asked, her breath caught. "Why?" "Because he was here tonight. And because that name is trouble." Tears filled her eyes. "Please, don't get involved." "I already am," he said softly. "Tell me the truth, Elena." She sank into a chair, trembling. "Carlo DeSantis killed my brother in Florence. Luigi is his cousin. I saw it happen. I ran. I've been hiding ever since." Lorenzo's jaw clenched. He had once done business with Carlo, until that same man betrayed him. "You're not safe," he said quietly. "They'll come for you." Elena looked up. "Then let me leave New York." He shook his head. "No, don't let her leave." Outside, Marco heard the words and nodded. For the first time, Elena realized the Mafia Boss wasn't her enemy. He was her only protection. That night, Lorenzo didn't let Elena go home. He called one of his drivers, Rico, and told him to take her to a safe apartment he owned on the east side of the city. Elena didn't argue. She was too tired, too scared. The apartment was quiet, clean, and fully furnished. When she entered, she turned to him and said softly, "You don't have to do this for me." He looked at her with calm seriousness. "I don't help people because I have to," he said. "I help them because I've lost enough people already." For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence felt heavy, but safe. But he placed a phone on the table. "Use this one if you need me," he said. "No calls from your own phone. They might trace it." She nodded. "Thank you." As he turned to leave, she said quietly, "Why do you trust me?" He looked back. "I don't," he said honestly. "But something tells me you don't deserve what's chasing you." Over the next few days, Elena stayed hidden in that apartment. Lorenzo sent food, clothes, and books for her. He came by every night after his business meetings, just to make sure she was safe. First, she was nervous around him, the mafia boss with the cold eyes and quiet power. But she soon saw the man behind it. He was protective, disciplined, and surprisingly gentle when he spoke to her. One night, she cooked dinner for him as a way to say thank you. It was pasta with tomato sauce, simple, but made with care. He tasted it and smiled faintly. "This reminds me of home," he said. "Florence?" she asked. He nodded. "My mother used to cook like this before everything changed." "What changed?" He looked at her for a long time. "Power," he said quietly. "Power changes everything. It takes people away. It makes enemies out of friends." She looked down. "I know what you mean." That night, they talked for hours. About Italy. About family. About what it felt like to lose people you loved. And slowly, something began to grow between them. Something neither of them planned for. Meanwhile, the DeSantis family was already in New York. Luigi DeSantis arrived with 2 men, asking questions at every Italian restaurant in town. They wanted Elena, the girl who had witnessed the murder in Florence. Marco reported this to Lorenzo. "They're close," he said. "They checked the restaurant again this morning." Lorenzo's face hardened. "If they find her, they'll kill her." He stood up and gave his men orders. "No one goes near the East Side apartment without my permission. If anyone follows me, take them out of the picture quietly." He was ready for a war, even if he didn't say it aloud. That night, when he saw Elena again, he didn't tell her everything. He didn't want her to panic, but she could see the tiredness in his eyes. "Something's wrong, isn't it?" she asked. He sighed. "They're getting closer." "Then I should leave. I can't let you get hurt because of me." He shook his head firmly. "You're not leaving, Elena. Not until I know you're safe." Her eyes softened. "Why do you care so much?" He hesitated, then said simply, "Because I can't stand the thought of something happening to you." The next evening, shots were fired outside the restaurant. Marco called immediately. "Boss, they found us." Lorenzo rushed down to the street. 2 of his men were injured but alive. A black car sped off into the distance. It was clear. The DeSantis family wasn't sending a message. They were starting a war. Lorenzo drove straight to the safe apartment. Elena opened the door, scared. "Pack your things," he said. "Now. Where are we going?" "Somewhere they can't find you." He took her to a house outside the city, a quiet place near the woods. It belonged to one of his old friends there. In the calm and silence, they finally had a moment to breathe. They sat by the fire that night. Elena said softly, "I thought you were dangerous." He chuckled. "I am. But you're also kind." He looked at her with a small smile. "Don't tell anyone that. It'll ruin my reputation." They laughed quietly. The first real laugh they'd shared since they met. Days turned into a week. The world outside was violent, but inside that cabin, time moved slowly and softly. Elena helped with cooking and cleaning. Lorenzo worked on his phone, sending messages and orders to protect their people. Night, they talked about their dreams, their fears, their regrets. One night, while watching the stars from the porch, she whispered, "I don't think I've ever felt this safe since my brother died." He looked at her gently. "You are safe. I promise you." She turned to him. "Why did you choose this life?" He was quiet for a moment. "Because I thought power was safety. But now I realize peace feels better." Their eyes met. The moment stretched between them. Slowly, carefully. He leaned closer, but stopped before he kissed her. He smiled. "Not yet." She smiled back. "Then I'll wait." But peace didn't last long. One morning, Marco called. "Boss, Luigi found the cabin. They're coming." Lorenzo grabbed his gun, told Elena to stay inside, and stepped out into the woods. A few minutes later, black cars appeared. Armed men came out. Lorenzo stood his ground. "This ends tonight, Luigi." Luigi sneered. "You're protecting a witness against us, Moretti. You think we'll let that slide? Try me." The fight was quick and brutal. Lorenzo's men arrived in time. Shots echoed in the woods. When it ended, Luigi and his men were caught. Lorenzo didn't kill them. He handed them to the police through an anonymous tip. He wanted to end this the right way. When he came back inside, Elena ran to him, tears streaming down her face. "You're hurt." He smiled weakly. "Nothing serious." She hugged him tightly. "Don't ever do that again." He whispered, "I had to protect you." A month later, life returned to calm. The restaurant reopened. The city moved on. Elena got a new job as a translator at an art gallery. She visited the restaurant sometimes, not as a waitress, but as someone special. Lorenzo changed too. He gave up some of his criminal operations, choosing quieter business investments. People said he was getting soft, but he didn't care. One night, he invited her to the restaurant after closing hours. The lights were dim, music soft. He handed her a small box. Inside was a gold bracelet. "It's beautiful," she said. "It belonged to my mother," he said. "She always told me, give it to someone who makes you believe in good again." She looked at him, smiling through tears. "So what now?" He smiled back. "Now you stay. If you want to." She nodded. "I want to." He held her hand, and for the first time in years, Lorenzo Moretti, the feared mafia boss, felt peace. Outside, New York lights glowed bright, but inside the restaurant, there was only quiet warmth and two people who had finally found safety in each other.